YouTube channel. Today we're going to be going over my 25 books to read in 2025 and see how I'm progressing 3 months into the new year. So far I've completed 2 of the books on my 25 to read in 2025 and I have 2 on my TBR for the month of March. So we'll go ahead and hop into those ones first and then do the final ones that I have yet to read in no particular order at the end. The first book that I picked up for my 25 books to read in 2025 is The Goal. This one originally was not on my TBR for January, but I did end up picking it up in January because I was feeling a hockey romance. I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars and really enjoyed it. It is the 4th book in the Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy, so I just have one more book in that series to complete. The other book that I've already finished for my 25 books to read in 2025, hi Bixby, is Red, White, and Royal Blue. I finished this one in the month of February, rated at 4.5 stars. I still have yet to watch the Amazon movie adaptation, but I'm really excited to eventually get to that. So now that we've covered the 2 that I've read from my 25 books to read in 2025, let's move on to the 2 that are on my current monthly TBR for March. First, we have Blood Like Magic. I honestly don't know a ton about this one. I just know that it had been on my physical TBR for way too long, and I really needed to, get it read and get it off the TBR. But basically, our main character, Voya, needs to kill her first love to keep her family's powers, but she's never fallen in love before. So I'm very excited to get this one done in the month of March. Our second priority TBR book that's on my TBR for the month of March is Mile High. This one is a sports romance. This one is following a hockey star and a flight attendant. Okay, now that we have gone through the 4 books that we know we've already read or we have plans to read very soon, let's go ahead and go over the remaining 21 books that I have on my 25 books to read in 2025. The main reason why I picked most of these books is because I've had them on my physical TBR for a year or longer, or they're part of a series I need to finish, or they were just books that I really wanted to get to, but I do think I need that extra little nudge to get to them. The first book we're going to touch on is In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife. I actually started this one and decided to DNF it about 2 years ago now. I was trying to read multiple books at one point in time. I just hated this book so much more than the other books I was reading. And that sounds really negative, but I was reading Twisted Games and Legends and Lattes while reading this one. And those are 2 of my top ultimate 5-star reads. I always recommend them. So for this one to be up against those 2 at the same time, it definitely was falling short. We have a group of college friends who are getting together for their college reunion, and they decide to look into the death of a friend that was part of their friend group in college who passed away, I believe, during their senior year. I personally don't like the main character in this book, but I also know that it's one of those where the main character is supposed to be unlikable. I believe her name's Jessica. Yeah, her name is literally Jessica Miller, and all she does is complain that she's so basic, she's so boring, her name is boring. And it's okay, girl, do something exciting. Do something then. If you think you're so boring, your name sucks, do something about it. I just felt like all she wanted to do was complain all the time. And she had this really great friend group in college, and she just wanted to complain about them. And I'm like, were they even really your friends? So yeah, I hope to finish this one this year. I believe Ashley Winstead has come out with a couple of other thrillers that have high potential, but if I can't make it through this first one of hers, I don't know if I'm going to end up picking anything else up by her. The next book on my 25 books to read in 2025 is Caraval. I don't really know a ton about this beyond the fact that it is the first book in a trilogy by Stephanie Garber, and then there's a second trilogy that this author has written that follows a couple of other characters in the same world. This is about 2 sisters and a magical carnival, and that's really all I've gotten. I don't know much else, but it seems really interesting. It seems kind of whimsical, fantastical, and I'm really hoping that I enjoy this because I do own all the books in this trilogy and all the books in the other trilogy that come after it. So if I don't like this first one, I don't know what to do with all the 6 books that I own that are from this author. The next book that I have on my list is 6 of Crows. So this book is set in the same world as the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I believe it's called the Grishaverse. But I don't know a ton about this particular story in specific, except that it follows a heist. And so it's part of a duology. Really excited to pick this one up. I know that a post went viral not too long ago about a girl getting proposed to with some lines from this book, and that definitely made me want to prioritize it even more than I'm already prioritizing it. But I've just had this on my shelves for a while. I believe I read Shadow and Bone, the first book in that trilogy, when it first came out, and just never picked up the other two. So I don't remember if I just didn't like the first book in that trilogy, but I've just heard so much better things about the duology that's a part of that world. So I want to pick this one up first. The next book that I have on the list is The Hunting Wives. I picked this one up at my local half price books. I believe like one of the first half price books trips I took when I got back into reading. I wanted to see kind of what all was out there. And they had a couple copies of The Hunting Wives. It looked really interesting, sounded really cool. I believe this one follows a woman who kind of moves to the suburbs and meets like an alluring socialite. I do know that this one's also becoming a TV show or a movie, and that was the main reason for putting it on the TBR over like other things that I've had for a really long time, is because I want to make sure I'm reading things before they become, adaptations. So I don't have a ton of reference for this one, but it seems to have a pretty good like cult following and people seem to really enjoy it. The next book that I have on my 25 books to read in 2025 is The Guilt Trip. This one is by Sandy Jones. I don't know too much about this one, if I'm being completely honest. We're noticing a theme here, as I bought a lot of books when I first got into reading that I didn't know what it was about. I believe this one's another kind of like island resort destination kind of thing. This one just seems to be like a good suspense novel. It's pretty short. It's not anything too crazy long. But I picked this up when I first got back into reading and just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. The next book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is another one that I'm influenced to read by the internet. I also think that this cover just looks so interesting and so stunning. It basically follows an old time kind of like Liz Taylor-esque actress who has been married multiple times, and at the end of her kind of life, she wants to do an interview tell all about all the times that she's been married. I don't know a ton about this book. I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid has multiple of these kind of historical fiction kind of books that are based on like real people, but not. I know that Daisy Jones and the Six is supposed to be kind of a reference and nod to Fleetwood Mac and how that whole relationship happened. So I'm not super sure where this one is going. The next book that I have on my 25 books to read in 2025 is As Good as Dead. This one is the final book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy by Holly Jackson. This is the biggest book in the series. I believe it's kind of chunky, but I did read the first two really, really quickly, like kind of back to back and in like a couple of days' time. So I really want to jump back into this world, follow our main character Pip, as I believe she solves a whole nother like murder mystery in this one. I did not love how dark the second book in this trilogy got. I feel like at the end, Pip is kind of realizing her like real life repercussions to all of these things that she's getting involved in. And it was kind of like traumatizing for her. So I'm kind of worried about where we will find Pip at the start of this book and where things will progress. I did read Holly Jackson's other thriller mystery that she came out with, I believe last year, The Reappearance of Rachel Price. And that one took a much darker turn than I was expecting it to take for a YA thriller. So I am a little bit nervous. Like, I don't usually get scared by thrillers, but if I'm picking up a YA thriller, I want it to be like a silly, cute, goofy time. I want it to be like a little bit spooky, but nothing like really traumatizing. But like, no, like all of the characters in The Reappearance of Rachel Price need extensive therapy, and I might too now. So I'm scared to round out this story and see what other traumatizing things might happen to our sweet girl Pip, because I just want Pip to have a good time. The next book that I have on my 25 books to read in 2025 is Murder Your Employer. This one's by Rupert Holmes. This one I don't really have too much knowledge on. I am super interested just because of the title. I think the title's hilarious. I believe it's about a school where people like learn how to commit crime. But yes, I've had this one since I believe the beginning of 2023. So we're coming up on having it for 2 years on the TBR, and I can't just let the title decide it belongs on my shelf without actually reading it. It is kind of a chunkier book in my opinion. I believe it's about 400 pages. So we'll see. We'll see how that one goes. The next book I have on my list is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I know that this one follows a slightly unreliable narrator who is upset about the successes of kind of like someone in her like circle, someone that she considers a peer in her kind of field. They're both authors, and the other author is just having so much more success than her, doing so much better than her. And when she's over at her house for tea or something, the more successful author passes away. I guess she has an allergic reaction to something, and the unsuccessful author decides to steal her manuscript and claim it as her own. I know that this tackles a lot of subjects about the like book industry, and kind of how the publishing industry treats authors. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this one and see what it's about a little bit more. The next book that I have on the TBR is a romance. It's called The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I actually purchased this book again when I got back into reading. Everyone raved about Christina Lauren, and I still have yet to pick up one of their books. I do know it's an author duo. An author duo is a prompt on my little TBR dice game. Specifically, so I have to read a Christina Lauren book because I own a couple. Like I own this one, I own The True Love Experiment, I have The Soulmate Equation. Like at this point I own so many of their books, and I don't know if I even like their writing style. So I feel like since this is the first book I picked up of theirs, I want it to be the first one of theirs I read. And also the print of this book feels massive. Like I don't know if I'm just being dramatic. There's like 12 words on this page. But the premise of this one does sound super interesting. Basically, there's a girl and she's a guest at her sister's wedding, I think. Yes. Yeah. Her sister's wedding, and her and the best man are the only two that don't get sick at the wedding. So because the honeymoon is non-refundable, they end up going on the honeymoon and having to pretend to be together. So a little bit of a fake dating situation, which I'm a sucker for. So really excited to see how this one goes. I think it might be more of a summer read is the only kind of caveat. Or it might be the polar opposite, and I might want to read it in the winter when all I can think about is wishing it was summer. The next book on my 25 books to read in 2025 is The Hemlock Queen. This is the sequel to The Foxglove King. I read that book in, I believe, 2023 and absolutely loved it and adored it. But it took a different turn than what I expected it to take, and I didn't love the ending. So to get myself in the spirits of reading the sequel, I decided to put it on my 25 books to read in 2025 to kind of motivate myself, get myself to continue the series, just to see kind of what it ends up being about. It's kind of a higher fantasy with necromancy and royals and a lot of political intrigue. So I'm pretty excited to see where the story goes, even if the very end of the first one was not exactly where I wanted the story to go. The next book that I have on my priority TBR for 2025 is An Ember in the Ashes. This is the first book in, I believe, a quartet, and it is by Saba Tahir. I don't know much about this series. I know that we are following a girl who is trying to protect her brother, and then she meets Elias, who is the finest soldier, but also the most unwilling at this military school she's trying to infiltrate. So I feel like this one's going to be really interesting. I only had the first two. I was about to say, I only had the first one because I've been looking for these covers. I'm trying to thrift this series because I think this cover is prettier than the covers that they're printing now. I think it's coming out in paperback in like a red cover, and I'm just not obsessed with those covers. I like these covers. I don't think this is the original cover either. I think the original cover had people, which I don't like that. I like this look of the cover. So I've been thrifting these slowly but surely to get the series. Almost done, I promise. The next book is By a Thread. This one's by Lucy Score. Typical Lucy Score fashion. It's a pretty thick one, so I'm kind of nervous about picking this one up. But I know that this one follows a girl who got fired from her job at like a restaurant. She was a waitress. A guy gets her fired, and then the guy's mom owns like a fashion company and hires her. Not 100% sure what all goes down, but I got this one when I first got back into reading. It's a grumpy boss romantic comedy, so hopefully, even though it is quite thick, it doesn't read like it is quite as thick as it is. Another romance on my 25 books to read in 2025 is Lukov with Love. This one is a Mariana Zapata book, so one of the few that I have left to read. I know this one follows two ice skaters and they have a romance. Another book on my priority TBR for 2025 is A Picture of Dorian Gray. I don't know a ton about this, but I did read a retelling of it pretty recently and absolutely loved it. So I decided to, put the classic on my TBR to hopefully encourage me to read it. I believe it's about a man who either paints himself or has a painting of himself made that keeps him young. So while he doesn't age, the painting of himself does. So I'm really interested in how that kind of works out for him. I know kind of what happened in the retelling, but this one I think is going to be a bit of a different ballpark since it is, set and was written in the past. I thought this Barnes & Noble edition was so pretty. Rounding out the final 5 books that we have on the 25 books to read in 2025 list, I have Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I've heard really great things about this author. In particular, her mystery thrillers do really well. I feel like Rock, Paper, Scissors is, I guess, a married couple, domestic thriller, and a lot of people really enjoyed that one. I picked this one up around the same time that I got The Hunting Wise. I actually think that's from the very same Barnes & Noble trip. I got this one and Hunting Wise in the same go. And I still haven't picked up either. I'm pretty sure this one is more of a ghost story than mystery thriller on the normal side. I think it's a little bit more paranormal. But they are at a house for her grandma's birthday, and people start dying or disappearing, and they're stranded on a secluded island. So I feel like this is going to give ooky spooky vibes for spooky season, and that's the main reason why it's on here, to get it knocked out. And so I'll read something spooky during spooky season. The next book on my priority TBR for the year is Billy Summers. This one is the only Stephen King book I own. I don't love horror or actual scary books. So I added this one onto the TBR because I've heard that it's not truly a horror novel. It's not as scary as his typical works. I believe this one follows an assassin named Billy Summers who retires and is getting offers for a job out of his retirement. So we'll see how this one goes. How big is this? I'm trying not to spoil anything for myself. 500 pages, so not terrible, but kind of wild for something set in our world that's not fantasy. But I've heard really great things from this. I know a couple of YouTubers that I follow have recommended it and have really enjoyed it. The last physical copy book that I have on my priority list for 2025 is People Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I believe I own all of Emily Henry's books, and I know that I will like them, but I feel like I need to start from the beginning. This was her debut, I believe, back in 2020 or 2021. So I really want to read it. I know that it is friends to lovers, which is not my favorite trope by a long shot. I actually usually hate friends to lovers, but we'll see how it goes. I've only heard really great things about all of her books, so I'm excited to start with the beginning. The last 2 books on my priority TBR for 2025, I actually don't have physical copies of. The first one is Zodiac Academy Cursed Fates. This is the 5th book in the Zodiac Academy series, and I've been reading all of those on Kindle Unlimited. Right now they are going through the process of getting republished with new covers, and I just like the new covers better. So I'm waiting for all of those new covers to come out before purchasing them. I believe they're only on the 2nd or 3rd book of the series getting its new cover right now. So I'm going to continue reading that series on my Kindle. And the last book on my priority TBR is Reign of Roses. This one is by Kate Golden, and it's the last book in the Dawn of Onyx trilogy. I believe that one has an actual title for the trilogy, Sacred Stones or something. But that one I know that I need to read. I just don't own a physical copy of it quite yet. Who knows? Maybe if I find one out and about in the wild somewhere, I'll pick it up. But for right now, not super in the mood to continue a fantasy series. So just have that one on the TBR as kind of a reminder to pick it up and to finish the series. I really loved the first book. Felt kind of middle of the road for the second book. So even though I have it on my priority TBR for the year, we'll see how it goes finishing it. That is all of the books on my priority 25 books to read in 2025. Right now, we're only 4 books in. 3 months into the year, so I should probably pick up the pace. I probably should have read a couple more in January and February from this list. I feel like it skews a lot more mystery than I've been reading. I haven't been really reading a ton of mystery lately, so I think that if I pick up a couple more mysteries in the next couple of months, I feel like I always say I'm going to save all my mysteries for like spooky season, September, October, when it is like that time. But I always end up having a bit of a mystery thriller kick in the beginning of summer. So we'll see if that happens again. And if I have a mystery thriller kick, then I can get a good chunk of these mystery thrillers kind of knocked out. And then we'll get back on track. But I'll take 4 out of the 25. I feel like there's still plenty of months left in the year. There's still plenty of time to get these books read. But that's kind of where I am at in my little priority TBR for the year. I think this was a nice little refresher of what all is on that priority TBR to kind of keep them top of mind and hopefully put them on my next couple of TBRs that I make for April and May. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let's go ahead and do the ghost emoji if you made it this far into the video. I feel like that's a good representation of Daisy Darker, which I'm pretty sure is a kind of more paranormal mystery thriller. But also, since we talked a lot about spooky season, a lot of these, like I said, are mystery thrillers for spooky season. And I think I'm ready for spooky season. So let's do a little ghost emoji. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! I guess Bixby is joining us because he really wants to be held right now. But all the videos don't have to be about you. These pages are soft. I'm holding it weird. Yes, it is a trilogy. Okay, I had to fact check myself. What is the first book in this series? I've never seen an emoji in my life, apparently.